everyone.
Welcome to Delight in Fright. I'm Kat, and this is the lovely Luna. And Luna, introduce our awesome guest today.
Yes, so we have in the house from the UK, David A. Roberts. David A. Roberts is a freelance editor and director over at YQ Films. He started that in about 2005. He has since directed Patriarch. He has directed Afterlife and released in 2021. He has directed segments of Inferno and the movie we're going to discuss today in greater detail, Older Gods, which released this year in 2023. How you doing, David?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to having a good chat. See how we get on.
Yes, absolutely. So you're our very first guest from the UK, and so that is so exciting. We reached across the pond, so I'm very excited for that.
If you don't understand any of my weird British references or if my accent goes a bit strange, just let me know, and I'll start again.
Oh no, I watch BBC
Okay.
on playback all the time, and I watch the IT Crowd shout out.
Oh
It's
dear.
a,
Oh yeah, I love
yeah,
that.
it's a great show. But without further ado, I'm going to play the trailer for this fantastic movie that we have the pleasure to see. So let me go ahead and play that now, and then we can get started discussing this fantastic movie.
Cool.
Chris, thank you for following the breadcrumbs. I knew you'd be the one to find them. Now, listen to my voice. My breathing is steady. I sound fully conscious. I'm not what you all think I am. If you look through our findings, you'll see that we'd found sites, out-of-the-way places to perform their depravities. We looked wherever there were reports of overindulgent murders, anything ritualistic. And we found lots of them. We realized we'd walked into their trap. They were tracking us.
Are you burdened with religion, Mr. Duffy? Do you know why he doesn't answer our prayers? He's scared, terrified, of waking something far older than him. He knows that by helping us, it would notice him. You see, your God is a coward. It answers me when I call. It listens. It tells me when it wakes, I will be rewarded for my devotion. And when it makes this world drown, I won't offer my hand to save any of you.
Yes! Oh my goodness! Ooh!
There you go.
Ooh! What a whirlwind. Kat, you wanna get us started on the questions?
Absolutely. What directors or creators inspired you as you were growing up?
I've always kind of leaned towards. John Carpenter was a huge one for me growing up because he was kind of, apart from Halloween, he was the guy. I always kind of saw him more kind of a punk guy. Do you know, kind of if Spielberg, all the bigger directors who had all the budgets were kind of pop. He was like the punk guy who's doing it himself. Where I think he did The Thing, which is one of my favorite films, and that was his only studio one, and he didn't like it, so he just went, "Oh, I'm just going to go and make films by myself." And I really respect that because you could say some of his films you know, but same with everybody, you know, some quality of high and low, but he's got quite a consistent one. And I think if you're a fan of his, he hasn't done any real stinkers, you know, he hasn't done any that, he's probably done films that aren't for everybody. I think if you're a John Carpenter fan, most of the things that you'll like, just in the fact that he just did it his way. He decided he got offered a lot of money doing other things. And apart from that, I like the way his films are just weird, because, you know, I think sometimes you can have a really good film, which is kind of, but, you know, sometimes you just, even though you think it was a good film, you just kind of, at the end, you just went, yeah, that's fine. And a couple of days go by and you maybe can't even remember watching it because it was so bland. But at least we've started liking anything which just is just memorable. You know, it's like, did it make you think? Does it make you want to go watch it again? Is it a bit different and weird? That's right up my street now. So John, there's a bunch of people, but John Carpenter, in terms of not just his films, but who he was as a director, I suppose, was right up there for me anyway.
Awesome. Even like Prince of Darkness, it's like, what did
I
just
love
watch?
Prince of
But I
Darkness.
love it. I love it. I know a lot of people give it crap, but I love it.
I love it because everybody's always talking about Halloween and The Thing, but I love Prince of Darkness. I love the strangeness of it and the cliffhanger ending and the weirdness of it. It's very weird, but it's
Right?
one that
And
he just
Alice
wanted
Cooper,
to do.
I mean, how could you not love that?
That's it. And a bug man. I remember the man who just falls apart and he's made of bugs and for no reason, but brilliant. Yeah, I love Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
But you can completely get why some people won't like it because of that weirdness and it being different, and things like Halloween is for. I think Halloween is kind of for all horror fans. You know, I don't know what you guys think, but when he starts taking different, you know, sci-fi routes, or Prince of Darkness is a bit like Lovecraftian, isn't it, and a bit cosmic horror, and
Yeah.
but I love the weirdness of it anyway.
Yeah, for me personally, Halloween 3, I know I always get a lot of slack for it, but Halloween 3, just the way Halloween 3 and The Fog are my favorite John Carpenter's.
Yeah.
But I know everybody's like, it doesn't have Michael Myers. I'm like, it does not need Michael Myers. It's a standalone, amazing storytelling. So
I think that's it. As long as the film stands by itself, you shouldn't have to compare it to other ones anyway. Because if they're all just a lot of you could argue the worst sequels of not just Halloween, but, you know, Friday and Elm Street and everything, the ones that just did the same thing as the one before it, they're usually the worst films. I quite like the ones that at least take a swing at it, and even if they fail, at least they tried to be different. So they'll have a little. They might not be on my favorite film list, but I'll have a bit of respect for at least they tried, you know. And Halloween 3 is one of those swings to let's try something different. And maybe they didn't have everything available to them like they did with the other ones, but a thumbs up in my book anyway.
So I wanted to say, getting a little bit into Older Gods, I absolutely love this movie, and
Thanks.
other than The Quantum Devil, which is releasing in October, Older Gods is probably my favorite movie. It has everything I love in a horror movie. It was not insanely grotesque, but the moments of blood that it did have, it was meaningful. There was meaningful blood, and I liked the meaning behind it. At the end of it, I felt like Chris shouldn't have gone on this journey alone. He was kind of a martyr and wanted to do this on his own, but some things, as a human perspective, and we're unfortunately social creatures, and he took it upon himself to do this big thing alone. And you can't do this alone, especially if you're somebody that's grieving. You are going to need assistance from others. So that's the main message that I got from this movie, is that no matter what you're going through in life, don't go through the journey alone, because it's just going to be that more difficult.
No, that's really great. I appreciate that, because it's obviously a film about guilt and grief, as you say, and none of us make good decisions while we're suffering from grief and guilt. So a lot of people say, well, why would he just disappear away from his wife? Because his brain's not working properly. He's on a rapid spiral. He doesn't know what to do. His oldest friend's just gone for no explanation. You're not going to act reasonably and think, okay, well, how can I do this well? And how can I plan this out? It's not. It's all instinct and snap terrible decisions, which is because people, some people you might ask, well, why didn't he leave? Why didn't he just arrive there, find horrible things going on, and then just leave instantly? It's kind of, well, if you're guilty and you're kind of feeling that, well, it's my responsibility to find out what happened. Nobody else is going to do it. So if I just go, I'm a coward, or I'm letting them go, or I'm letting them down, or so that was the main whole message behind it, really. So yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. So if he had somebody to go there with him, he would have been a lot better off, wouldn't he? Really?
Yeah, and not only that, even if they would have been, outnumbered or whatever, I still feel he needed somebody to be there with him, because nobody should have to go through grief alone.
Yeah.
And I understand that you wrote this out of, your own grief.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a little bit about a friend of mine passed away, but it was during COVID. But he wasn't because of COVID. He's been sick a while, and it was kind of, we were going to be able to talk to him on just over video like the next day, because it was one of those rushes to, we need to kind of say goodbye to him. And then they told us we couldn't for some reason. We'll do it tomorrow, and then he passed away through the night. So it was always that kind of, even though, that's not my fault. That's nobody's fault. It's just one of those horrible things. But your brain just plays tricks on you, doesn't it? And it's kind of, oh, well, what did he know I cared about him? Did he know that I gave a crap? And so it wasn't the kind of like, I'm going to take that story and write it down. It was more that clearly bled into the script I was already in the middle of writing while that was happening. So a little bit. So it was at least gave me a good first person's view of why you would do something, because why you might do something a rational person would think it's a bit silly, but it's more kind of because you're not making good decisions. You go away, and as I say, like I had guilt of not being able to. Your brain thinks, did they care? Did they know I cared? Of course he knew, but there's the fact that my brain won't let me compute that in a way when you're kind of grieving. So
Exactly.
that clearly went into the script as I was writing, because I did want to do kind of a Lovecraft cosmic horror Lovecraftian. Obviously, there's budgets involved because you mentioned, as you say, when you said what the films I've directed, you mentioned Patriarch, which is actually my next film I'm going to do.
Oh, okay.
So, but the difference, what we were about to do, Patriarch, which is a much bigger budget one, and then boom, global pandemic. So we kind of had to make a decision on, we still had some budget left. So what can we do, the team at Wagyu Films, that we can do with just a couple of locations, a couple of actors. So we tried to write something I've been working on for a while anyway, but it's just kind of like that one, then I could put a priority. So there was clearly like keeping things to a budget, keeping things to minimal locations and people. But the fact that something like that happens, and it actually gives it a bit more reality to it, should we say, rather than just creepy stuff. Goes to a cottage and creepy stuff happens. At least if something happens in my personal life that can bleed into that, I think that's what's it called, life imitating art, or whatever, the other way around. Should surely make it, if not better, at least individual to me and the guys, I suppose. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely get how that guilt can kind of get to you, because I would call my mom like every other day, every day. It was never a quick call. We're talking like hours. Sometimes we just could never get off the phone. And then the day before she passed, I was supposed to call her, but her granddaughter was there with her. So I said, no, let let her spend some time with her granddaughter. She didn't get to spend much time with her. And the next day she passed, and then I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
guilt just it's a real killer.
But that's it. You forget about the thousands of conversations you had with her that you clearly would have got across everything that you cared and loved about her. But your brain doesn't work like that, does it? You just think of if I was it's like what would have happened differently, if and there's something to not saying goodbye in a strange way as well, so
I love the film. I loved how you were able to take that internal struggle that we all struggle with, bring it to the forefront, as far as mental health and everything as well, and show that the things in our mind can be more real than anything, and making it real in those horrors. And I love the cinematography was beautiful, the hidden things in the background, the creepy shadows and stuff. You're like, what the but the character, the actor who plays Chris, just wow.
Rory Wilson.
What amazing, what a range on him. And since this project was so close and near and dear to your heart, how long did it take you to cast him?
Well, Rory, I was pretty lucky because Rory, we did, I think you mentioned it before, we did a short film called Afterlife, Life with a Y, which is on YouTube, which is actually one I'm really proud of, actually. And there was a lot of casting involved in that, so we found Rory. So then when it came to Older Gods, was the first feature after Afterlife. He was top of the list for... He was great in that film. Good guy to be around, he was personal. The crew liked him. Turned up and knew his lines and professional. You should never underestimate the power of just turning up, knowing your lines, and being professional. Because I think that's what gets you the next job. Because you can have somebody who's an amazing actor, but if they're just a pain to have around, they tend to not be in the next one with you. But Rory ticked all the boxes. So when we were kind of, and we were, as I say, it wasn't a rush with Older Gods, but we weren't, because Patriarch had to be delayed, we didn't want to wait around. We were just like, let's do something. So then when the script was being written, I kind of had Rory in mind, knowing he could do it. So there wasn't a huge casting process for the film. It was more, we'd put him through the gauntlet in an earlier project. So it was quite good that, and it was great that he wanted to do it and didn't just want to do it, but just kind of dived in there because it was his first feature lead role. So he took the ball and run with it, so to speak. He really just got into it because we had to. There was no kind of half-assing it in it because we were actually filming in the bubble during COVID. It was during the end of COVID. It was, we all had to stay in that cottage, and that's why we had to keep the crew to a minimum because there wasn't a hotel for miles. So we had to do it. Whoever was there had to stay in that cottage. So if you're the lead actor, you kind of got to stay with all the crew and get up early and have breakfast with them. And it's quite nice, actually. The strange thing is we try and make the cottage all creepy, but when the sun's out, it's actually a really lovely place to go on holiday. But we all sit outside. It was because annoyingly, we wanted the dark, gloomy British weather. And then that week we filmed, it decided to be the hottest weeks of the year, of course. So we were outside, me and Rory and all that, we're having a nice breakfast every morning when we get up, and we did a brief for the day. But we're really proud of Rory's performance because I think it's if the lead performance doesn't work, the whole film falls apart because it's all just him, isn't it? It's all, he gets phone calls and he meets the person, has a scene every now and again with somebody, but it's all, he's in every single shot, I think, so, apart from close-ups of hands and things. He's got to be, he's really proud of the performance, and hopefully it should be a springboard for seeing him in bigger and better things in the future as well.
Yeah, I really liked his performance. And the quote that stood out to me the most, no spoilers, guys, because if you haven't seen it, I want you guys to see this. But the quote, "Hope is but a shimmer in the horizon."
Did you like that?
Nice. I love that. What
What are the
what kind of inspired some of the interesting quotes that they would say, this cult like people would say?
that's one I've had in a while. I think it's the hope is a shimmer on the horizon. No matter how close you think you're getting to it, no matter how far away it is, you can never get closer to it.
Mhm.
And it's one of the if I hear something, I've noted that obviously used to do it on a notepad, but now you stick it on your phone. I tend to, from reading a book or something, and usually I never copy it with, but it's only just something makes you think. So you hear a conversation. I'm a bit of a sponge for, and I've heard the word shimmer on the horizon a bunch, and that kind of made me think that, okay, shimmer on the horizon, how can you make that as part of the story? And it kind of makes sense that, no matter how you can keep walking, but no matter, you're just never going to get there. So there's a few in there. I can't remember what something. There's one which is kind of talking about madness, where it's kind of like we're all bending in the wind, and this fear eventually broke them. Talking about this cult, you just little bits that you pick that up in terms of. I've heard somebody talking. I'm sure I've heard people talk about everybody's bending in the wind, and it only takes a certain. It's basically in a way to say that nobody's special in the way that they're stronger mentally than other people. It's just we're all kind of bending in the wind, but some people get stronger winds, and then you ends up breaking you. So it's kind of collect them along the way. I strangely have a notepad full of phrases kind of like that, where I will then look into putting them into scripts rather than sat on my computer trying to work out what sounds clever and deep. It's more kind of I find excuses to use them, shall we say. So there's a few of those in Older Gods, to be fair.
Oh yeah, yeah. Which quote did you like, Kat?
Sorry.
Like that. I really liked that one as well. I thought it was beautiful.
What about you, David? What's your favorite quote that you use in Older Gods?
In Older Gods, I quite like there's a scene. I don't know how to spoil it. There's a scene later on which is a bit more emotional, shall we say? In which a lot of horror fans are not a big. They want more gore and stuff sometimes, but we did put tried to put a bit of an emotional scene in it, and he does mention that swimming in your wake made me a stronger swimmer, because a lot of people think, oh, swimming in my wake, as if that's a bad thing, as if Chris was the lead, is the stronger person that's always kind of, and he's had his friend who's just kind of swam in his wake and always kept along, but his friend realized if he didn't have that person to be in swimming in his wake, so to speak, he wouldn't have been such a stronger swimmer, and he would have sank a lot earlier. I was quite like I was quite like the concept of that, where just because you're swimming in somebody's wake doesn't mean it's a bad thing, because surely you have to struggle harder and to try and keep up. And surely that makes you a better swimmer, so it stops you from sinking. And I think that was his way of getting across that you don't have to be guilty. Swimming in your wake was actually a good thing to me, which I quite like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Even if I do say so myself about my
own no, for sure.
I'm not going to give it myself.
That's a really nice one.
The other one that stood out to me also, I think it went something like, "Life isn't a rehearsal. Don't waste it."
Yeah,
that was a good one too. I was like, "Ooh."
That's a lyric from a song. That one. That was one, or at least I got. Remember the Verve, Bittersweet Symphony?
Yes,
remember the Verve, Bittersweet Symphony? I'm sure they had. It was either a lyric or was on one of the single covers or something like that. I wasn't a huge fan of theirs, but when you just remember things, even from when I was a kid, because I liked them when I was a teenager. I was remember just a sign saying "Life's not a rehearsal." I thought that was really cool. So I'll give them a bit of props on that.
Awesome.
So obviously you're an Elder God fan, H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu. What is your favorite type of H.P. Lovecraft tale?
Um, yeah, you never want to say Call of Cthulhu because that's like the greatest hit. That's kind. Do you know? It's kind of like you want to say a little obscure one that nobody knows, don't you? The Mountains of Madness was really great because it was kind of a
Nice.
that was like a descent into madness and a strange. I always because people say is Older Gods a Lovecraft tale and it's not. It's Lovecraftian, which is the what should we say? The structure of a Lovecraftian tale is there's something you hear about something strange and you have to go on a journey to investigate it to find out more, and things get stranger and stranger as you go. And you know, so it's kind of that. But Mountains, I like the short story Dagon, which is just kind of like it's a short one where the bottom of the sea comes to the somebody wakes up in a boat adrift, and they wake up and the floor of the sea has come up, and so he's just walking for miles on this floor of the sea. And I don't know. So I think they're all kind of metaphors for things, aren't they? And he was a bit of a suspect guy, Lovecraft, as well. So he's always kind of. I think sometimes what he thought of people, he thought of I'd put them as monsters and things. But Monsters at Madness, it's called a Cthulhu, really, but I can't say that because everybody knows that one. But it's is it the Lurking Fear is my most obscure one, which is more of a kind of there's not a lot of monsters in that, but it's more of a heading off into the hills when you hear stories of people going missing and villages. Well, that was very much. Tick the box for Older Gods in terms of inspiration, shall we say? But that's all Lovecraft, really. It's all kind of like something weird happens, somebody hears about it, tries to investigate, and it doesn't go well. That's usually the case. And that's the format we took, really. But it's
where did the symbol come from? Is that pulled from anything?
The symbol we designed it alongside Andy Sexton, who's our art director. He did. He kind of designed it with a line through it and everything. But there's I'm a big fan of Dune, the sci-fi book Dune, and they use the term "wheels within wheels" a lot in it.
Nice.
Which means plans. You know, it just means like. Where they're all scheming against different houses and all that. There's plans within plans, and there was a little bit of that, like because all I put in the script was a circle within a circle, rather so the line. I think the line was like designed later on because it looked a bit cooler and a bit more creepier, should we say? And plus, we did things like there he is. If you don't have that line through it, it doesn't look as kind of strange. But all I put in the script was circle within a circle, and that's a bit from wheels within the same wheels within wheels, as if the cult has got plans for all of us and each of us, and it's kind of where that comes from, if that makes sense.
Nice.
Plus, it just looks cool, so that helps as well.
Yeah, it was very well done. My personal favorite thing in the movie that I thought was so cinematically beautiful was that tree. That I don't know, is it a willow tree?
I don't know what it is. It's it was just because the woods. Our location manager Martin Merida runs this piece of forest because it's not as easy as to film in a forest as you'd think, unless you're in the absolute middle. Because you can find really good forests, but you'll be filming and then somebody will be walking a dog as they come past, or planes will be coming over. So it took a while to find the right place, and it was just in the middle of. What's strange was we'd filmed at that location for another short film we'd done. And I just remembered that tree because the tree was like, why is it so? Because it's by itself. There's no other tree like it around it. There's just this one fat tree in the middle, which it looks a bit creepy. And ironically, it had a swing hanging from it, like a child's swing, like two ropes and a piece of wood. And it always looked creepy to me, with no child swinging on it. It's just a creepy.
They are creepy.
So
we actually have a viewer question that came in.
Okay.
What do we got, Luna?
Brian is saying, The scenes with the monolith remind me of the scenes from 2001 Space Odyssey. Did David get any inspiration for his story from Space Odyssey?
Not for this story, but I'd be a liar if 2001 wasn't inspiration for anybody who's kind of. There was like pre 2001 films, especially sci-fi films, and then post stuff. So the monolith to the monolith to us is supposed to be a marker. You know, it's like it's like you've been noticed. This kind of comes down on a mark, and if I remember 2001 properly, it's kind of similar there in a way, isn't it? It's kind of, but. You say the designer, we were trying to, if anything, we were trying to get away from that apart, because we did have a couple of other shots where I think when we did visual effects at first, we made it all shiny. It's like shine, like reflective, but that was very 2001. So I wanted it. You can't really tell because it's in the fog and things like that. But if you take the fog away, it's very like dirty rock. It's like lots of bobbles and cuts and scrapes on it. So if anything, I've probably been inspired by 2001 in my career as a filmmaker, but not so much Older Gods. In fact, you're trying to get away from it a little bit because you just go, that's the monolith in 2001. But if you have any kind of monolith, or you're going to be compared to 2001 because there's no more famous one than that. Because we were originally going to make much more of a big thing about it, because bits we had to chop out of Older Gods were. There's going to be a lot more found footage of, obviously, Billy, his friend, leaves lots of video diaries and things like that for Chris to. And originally, we had lots of found footage of him in Bosnia going around jungles himself and then seeing these monoliths and things like that. But we had to cut it out just because of time and budget. And actually, there's a point where you're like, let's just get this film finished. So we didn't include it. But as a filmmaker inspired, definitely. As this film itself, probably not. Unless, what's the word? Not thinking about it. If you have a monolith, it's the part of the brain that stores monoliths. It's something to do with 2001, isn't it?
That makes a lot of sense.
Sorry if I keep drinking all the time. I've just got a bit of a cough, so I'm trying not to cough every time I do it.
No worries.
All right, Miss Cat. I wanted to go into a little bit of going back to the cinematography. How did you guys find like the woods? How did you guys find this house? Because from what I understand, it was extremely secluded, and what you've mentioned on the show sounds like it was very difficult to get a hold of. So how did you find it on Airbnb, or what? How did that come about?
I think we did. It was kind of we had that we already had the woods, because, as I say, we did another short film, because once you've got a good location that could look like several places, it's like there's no point looking. If as you're writing it, I was thinking of that place, so like boom, stuck, one less problem to worry about. But the cottage was tricky, because you'd find places in the middle. You forget that even in the UK is not ridiculously big, like compared to the US, or but there's still places in the middle of nowhere that had cottages that were running on generators and things like that. And you think that's too remote, that's too much, I can't do that. And find ones that are at the top of Snowdonia, which is one of our biggest mountain ranges, where you're like, just getting there is going to be a nightmare. And we asked I'm from Wales, so if you're not sure what that means, is Britain, or the UK, is made up of Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And I'm from Wales, so Wales is where these Snowdonia mountains are. It's like we all call it the New Zealand of Europe, because that's how, especially when talking to Americans, because they go, right, got you. Do you know, like mountain ranges, lots of forests. It's beautiful country.
Beautiful, yeah.
Really recommend anybody going to it. It was really hard to try and make it look creepy, because it's such a lovely place to be.
Yeah.
But we talked to. There's like a Film Wales, where you can go to them and they suggest locations. And then they found one. I was like, oh, that would be perfect, which was the cottage we ended up in. But it was like a ridiculous price. So we were just like, is it worth it to hire it? And then we realized that we could cut out the middleman by, ironically, the cottage was on Airbnb or something. So while we were searching, we were like, I know that place from something. And so basically we got rid of a location manager fee and then just went straight to the person who owned it, and it was like half as much. So because we were gutted, it was like that was too expensive. So but it would have been perfect, and then by finding it later, we were really happy. So it took a while. Not months and months and months, but it should be a lot easier to find. Cottage, middle of nowhere. But it's who owns it. Can you get permission to film there? It's also not just the person who owns the cottage. Like there's one day where we were very much chased off some of the fields because we didn't realize that the person who owned the cottage didn't own some of the fields around it. So some unhappy farmers chased us off their land. So it took a while, but we were really happy. And the other thing was we needed somewhere to stay. So we needed, I think it was only 8 crew. So we needed everybody. We needed a place with a lot of bedrooms, and I slept on the couch for most of it because I'd finished at like 2. I sleep on 2 in the morning and got to get up at 6. It's just no point. Just sleep on the couch. Because I was usually the one at night getting ready for the next day. So I just always kept on. But it's not just luck. There's also logistics, and can people stay somewhere? And have you got the legal right to film there? Is it like one problem we had was we did a location scout of it a couple of times. Looked great, perfect, brilliant. The cottage was surrounded by, like corn, like not corn, but like the long grass, the hay type grass. So it looked brilliant. It looked like like the gladiator putting their hand through the reeds at the beginning. It was all like surrounded by that. Day one, we turned up, and then the farmers were all cutting them down, which they were huge fields, so it takes them all day. So day one, we were like, well, we can't film anything with sound. So what can we film without sound? There's little things you learn later on that are just kind of should have really checked. So when's the harvest, so to speak? And it was lucky it was day one was all right because we weren't in a rush. It would have been much worse. It was kind of like, we got 1 day left there and we've got all the stuff to do. That would have been bad. But so we were quite unlucky day one, but I'd say lucky it wasn't later on in the week. And there's weird things like, because it was so secluded, I'm not sure it had drinking water. Like the water out of the taps was kind of brown. And we were like, why is it brown? And it's just like dirty water.
Well water.
Why is that? So we didn't realize that until later. So we had to go drive to nearest towns to get bottles of water and things like that. And when everybody showered there, you had to shower this brown, because it was either the hottest week of the year where you're obviously getting all sweaty, or go in the brown shower. So you live and you learn. Lessons for next time you find it. Because when we found it, we felt so lucky. We found you assume there would be clear water. You assume no farmers should be chopping down
Assume
everything.
nothing.
But never assume anything. Never assume anything. Good lessons learned for the next one, anyway.
Yeah. Should you, as a director, do you consult with like the neighbors also, just in case, just in case, for example, you're filming a scene with like weapons and somebody being chased around, so that way they're not startled.
Yeah, is anything like that, and we're there's no guns and stuff like that. There's people running around with blades and things like that. And is it hook knife? I don't know. There's one very nasty one, which is it's supposed to be for chopping thin woods through jungles type things, like a curved blade, and it's nasty. But the thing was, usually yes, but you couldn't see anybody for miles. It was like there was nobody. It was hills either side. It was like a little valley, so you couldn't see. There's one, I think at the beginning you see a bit of a drone shot, and I'm sure right in the back you can see a farm in the distance somewhere. But they wouldn't be able to see anything that we were doing. You had to keep it quiet. We did one shoot in the dark with lots of shouting and things like that, and you do get a bit paranoid that you're upsetting somebody. But any other shoot, yes, definitely. But because this one was so, that's the
remote.
Farmers that were chopping the fields had come from miles away to chop them, so it was.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, usually, obviously, it's more. Even though we're a small It was a small. We do take health and safety very seriously. And we
Mhm.
don't want anybody to. You've also got a reputation in the business, so if you are found, oh, that's that crew that turned up and didn't care about things, and even though you think it won't, it could follow you somehow in terms of somebody leaves a review somewhere or somebody does a comment, or even if they're not in the industry, so to speak,
It'll
being
get out.
being an idiot will get back to you somehow. I think the days of just being that angry, shout at people, do what I want type filmmaker are gone. You can't survive that anymore, especially with social media. But it's just that was
Thinking
it. It
about
was just, we would change.
the old days, what got you started in the industry?
So I didn't do too great in school, but I always loved film. So do you know when you kind of? So I left school at 16, which is quite normal for the UK. And it was one of those where I either go to it was like community college, not college. So it was like you go to community college, or you go join the army. I think that was the options I have, and I went, I'm going to go join community college. So it was strange where it was the only thing I had any passion for. And it was like, well, I do love films. I kind of, you know, when you're so young and I always think it's hilarious when they choose at 16 to 18 what you're going to have to do for the rest of your life, because you can't spell your own name properly. You don't know what you want to do. So it was one. So I was quite lucky that I had the foresight of, well, at least I know a lot about film and I'm passionate about it. I had some good teachers who made you, because I had terrible. I think why I didn't do great in school is I had terrible teachers. And then I went to community college and I had two brilliant ones who just had time for me, who, if I had a question, it wasn't a silly question. So you get to a point where if you feel respected, you want to learn more. So that really helped me learn it. So then actually from not doing great in school to doing community college, I actually did okay there to be able to go to actual university college. And there, which obviously studied film studies there, but you could still argue that you didn't know what you were doing. It was just the next step. There in school, I actually met in university. I met Sean Bishop, who's the guy who did all the brilliant cinematography that you're talking about. He's our cinematographer. I met Keith Lupton, our production designer, who's a photographer and designer in his own right. So we met them there. And Scott Bishop, who does all the visual effects and the editing and things like that, he's actually Sean's brother. So moving into university, it was like surrounding yourself with like-minded people. Because now it's got to the point where if somebody's asked me, would I do it with other people? It's like, no, it's our crew, so to speak. Because that's what Wagyu Films is. It's the four of us are producers, and we bring on other people that we don't do in-house. So we have a bunch of because we cut our teeth and paid the bills before the films by doing like 1,000 commercials, which so by doing that we were able to build a team and have a studio and have all the camera gear and all that. So we were a lot easier to invest in, shall we say. So it was kind of one of those where liking films, and I remember writing scripts as kids. God knows what happened to them. And then it was just even as somebody who was not that interested educationally, if that's a word, I always cared about film, so I just went with film, and clearly that was what was on the cards for me anyway. You know, I think just from where I'm from, being a film director is not really an option. So you just think it's something. That's why you can't going to take it that seriously, because I don't live in Los Angeles. I don't even live in London. So at least in the UK, you can say, well, everything's done in London. But again, if you get to the point where we got to the point where doing these commercials and shorter things, and it got us to a point where we're actually able to make an okay living. And you get to the point where we can just do it ourselves. And what Older Gods has allowed us to do is we struggled a lot to do that, but now in future films we don't really need other people. So and if we do, the weird thing happens once you don't need other people, everybody kind of gets in touch and wants to work with you in a strange way, which has kind of happened after Older Gods. So it's kind of like before your debut feature, everybody's always like, well, get your first film out the way. But as soon as you get your first one out the way, you kind of can say no a little bit more, which is actually what's the word? A really lucky place to be, should I say. But going from where I grew up, never going to happen, to doing it ourselves That's something I'm really proud of, because we didn't have to wait for somebody else's permission to do it, essentially, which is great.
Nice.
Yeah. Especially with that Patriarch thing, because Patriarch is paid by investors. So the COVID happened, and they obviously all private investment, so they had to step back and say, "Oh, we got to leave it until this the pandemic's all done." So we just went, right, let's do something ourselves. Let's do it. We had a pretty okay budget. To anybody else in the universe, you say that's a huge amount of money, but when it comes to film, it's not so much. So we're just very proud of that, basically, from where we came from to being able to do it ourselves, and that's really put us in a good road for we can now make a slate of films rather than just what's the next film. We can actually line up 2 or 3, not to do at the same time, but to plan for, essentially.
That's incredible. The only other movie that I know of that was filmed in Wales is actually one of my favorite movies. It's Submarine. It came out in
Oh, yeah,
2010. Came out in 2010. It was directed by Richard
from the IT
Ayoade.
crowd.
Yep.
From the IT crowd, yeah.
From the IT crowd. He directed this movie, and it's so quirky. It's like a coming of age. It's like kind of has a lot of different layers to it. There's like act 1, act 2. He breaks it down in such a cinematic, beautiful piece. It's
really,
like, you know,
yeah, it's really lovely. It's kind of got that deadpan comedy, which I really like, and it's quite Welsh that as well.
yeah.
But it's a really good film. That's the thing. There's never a lot of Welsh films, but there's loads of films filmed in Wales, especially for the whole mountain, forest, countryside type bit. But Submarine is quite good because it's none of that. It's actually in a town, isn't it? And what it's like to grow up young in Wales, which is really, really cool film, actually. Really like that.
Yeah. Did you grow up in Wales also?
Yeah, I think that's South Wales, and I'm more North Wales. It's more. I grew up in a very seaside town. You know, like I don't want to say the Jersey Shore. What's the relevance to? But it's more in those seaside towns where everybody goes on holiday there. If they don't go abroad or somewhere, it's okay. Yeah, so grew up in the Welsh seaside, basically.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely want to visit Wales someday, so I'll keep that in mind. North Wales is where you go on holiday.
I recommend it. That's where Snowdon is as well, or the mountainous New Zealandy Lord of the Ringsy type place. That's North Wales. They call it the middle of it's called the valleys because it is all nothing but valleys, and all the life, should we say, all the cities is all around the edge. So like Cardiff and Swansea, big cities on the top and on the north. So I really recommend. And never heard of anybody going to Wales and. Like I was in Wales last week randomly because I live in Liverpool now, which is where the Beatles are from.
Liverpool.
And I was just in the middle of nowhere, just because it's like my happy place, you know, where I'll go out for a day somewhere, because it's only like 2 hours drive away. And I met somebody from Chicago, and just randomly, it's just like, oh, okay, well, great, it's brilliant seeing that. Yeah, I recommend it.
Nice. Fantastic. I've definitely loved, like, it just looks like such a beautiful place.
It's because people seem to recognize Scotland and Ireland more because it's, you know, Braveheart or everything in the country something Ireland, but it's very similar. Scotland, Ireland, and they're the Celtic countries, we call them. So if you're Scottish, Irish, or Welsh, you're Celtic. Before the English turned up, we were all Celts. That's
yeah, that makes sense.
And David, if funding wasn't a worry for you at all, let's say you had unlimited budget, what type of film do you think you'd work on?
It would be, I'd like to be one of those guys who pretended, no, I keep everything I do small and emotional, but I wouldn't. I do a big, not a big Michael Bay Pune type film, but I'd do something. You love to do a Lord of the Rings I think there would always be elements of horror to it, though, to be honest. I think if if I was to do a big sci-fi thing, it would be more Alien than Star Wars. If I was going to do a big actiony type thing, there would be a horror type element to it, and that's maybe my main. I might go in the future and do lots more dramas and things like that. But I think, even I'd argue like if you said Peter Jackson, I don't know why I keep talking about Lord of the Rings, but Peter Jackson was a horror
Yes.
director
He
before.
started, yeah.
Yeah, and then even when he did is it Beautiful Creatures? Is that what it's got? The
Heavenly Creatures.
Heavenly Creatures. Even that's got dark moments in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'd argue that if you watch Lord of the Rings, there's a couple of horror moments in it. So some of the
Definitely.
Battle of the Balrog,
The Uruk-hai.
or just the bits with the ring rate, the ring rates.
Yeah.
That's still, even though you don't say Lord of the Rings is a horror, it's definitely got horror moments in it for his back. And I'd like to think I would be somewhat similar, where I might do bigger films, but I'd still.
I know Luna has a suggestion for you.
I'm going to pitch it because I pitched it to all directors that come on the show.
Okay, here we go.
I want a fantasy horror movie. Some elves fighting a Michael Myers-like creature. You got elves and woodland fairies and just a bunch of stuff being attacked by a slasher. Just, fantastical Pan's Labyrinth meets Friday the 13th kind of.
I like recently I watched that. Why? It's not really but have you seen Prey? That new Predator film with the Native Americans? I thought that was going to be terrible. I watched it. I was like, this is because it's different. It's so much different to the 19 other Predators that did the same thing as the first one. But it did get you thinking as I was watching that. I was just like, well, all you need is to film in some woods. You have an interesting creature, but you just need a good character and a journey, and where I'm not saying it'll be anything soon, but my was thinking was something on the gist of Apocalypse Now meets not Predator, but there's something in where somebody's trying to get deeper into a jungle or something to find something, but there's something tracking them.
So you're thinking sci-fi, fantasy, horror?
Yeah.
Ooh.
See what happens. But no, that's the stuff. Honestly, that's the stuff I'd want to do, because you have. I'd argue that people say, "What would you do with older gods if you had more budget?" And I'd argue not a lot. I'd probably have a few extra scenes or a couple more people in it. But honestly, when you think about it, it's like, what else could you, in terms of budget size, you could get a fancier house and a fancier, maybe, like bigger stars. But I was really proud of what Rory did. And so you think of the future, it's kind of like, and each film we want to be doing a step up, essentially. I wouldn't want to go from older god size to just a ridiculous budget, which some people start sniffing around you, offering you that, where amount of careers that you see that, oh, great, that sounds awesome. And then they do it, and then you never hear from them again. There's reasons why, because it's just horrible, and you have to deal with it, and you're not ready for it, or blah, blah, blah. But
they always want something in return, don't they?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That as well as you've got to be able to. One good thing about doing commercials and things like that is we're used to dealing with the suit, should we say? Because when you do commercials, you have clients who pay for this commercial. That, again, our job, not going to be crazy passionate about commercials, but that part of what we do to pay for our films, so to speak. But if we're able to deal with the investors a lot better than most people who say they're just artists, which I like to think of myself as an artist and everything, but we're also, you have to kind of be a business person in the film as well. If you can't, so the amount of careers you hear about people, creative differences, whatever they call it, is just somebody was just difficult and, no, I want it my way. It's like, but somebody's just giving you $10 million. You're not going to hear them out. Do you know what I mean? No, it's my thing. So I think we're in a good place to be set up for that. We're not going to dive straight into it because we'd like to make another one sooner, which is again, the same team, slightly bigger than Older Gods, but not ridiculous. And then as we go, keep step up, essentially. And maybe a horror fantasy would definitely be high up there, something I'd like.
Yay.
I'd love to do. I'd love to do horror fantasy. It's just doing the right one, and you take one which is an original.
Yeah, and I was gonna say we don't have enough horror fantasy. Like, I'm just so
I
in
think
love
of
with.
good ones.
Yeah, I
It's hard
just
to think of good ones.
exactly, and I just love Pan's Labyrinth, and I want to see more of that with more of like horror elements.
Yeah, if you gave me if you gave me 30 minutes to think of some good ones, I probably could. But Black Death, have you seen Black Death? The Sean Bean. You can guess that
Yes,
Sean Bean
Sean
doesn't.
Bean.
Sean
He
Bean doesn't
does.
last long in it. Can you guess?
No, he
of
does. He
course.
does and everything.
Yeah.
Mandatory.
That's the one that comes to my brain. But that's kind of a cultish.
Shape of the Water is one that comes to mind for me.
Yeah,
That
that's
was really
fun.
good
I
one.
keep thinking when you say the word fantasy, you keep thinking swords and that, but it's not necessarily.
Yeah.
I think, but yeah, no, it's we're waiting for a really good one, then, shall we say? And we'll
Yeah.
we'll see what we can do about that.
Yeah, when we did the movie review, me and Kat did a movie review for Peter Jackson's horror movies. We did find out that The Frighteners is actually in the horror genre, and that's actually one of my favorites that Peter Jackson's done, other than, of course,
that's
Lord
a
of the
horror.
Rings.
I think it's because it's a bit kookier because you have the Michael J. Fox style
Mm.
comedy. But I always argue that even though you have that comedy, when it turns to a dark moment, it makes it a lot darker. Like I think films that are just dark, which is why a lot of horror fans have had to go at Older Gods for us trying to have a nice ending and things like that sometimes. But they might not be quite getting the point of that. Is it real? Is it not? Type thing. But
Yeah, I like to leave it up to the viewer to decide.
yeah,
I like that.
but if you have moments of which I'd like to get more in Older Gods, but it's just you need somebody to bounce off. So when it's if one guy's by himself being funny, it's just be strange. You need to have a back and two with somebody to be funny, don't you? But I'd argue the frightness is, of course, a horror. It's just the having the funnier, lighter moments makes the darker bits. Because that
Extra.
CGI thing coming out the wall, the death type thing, which is clearly a precursor for the Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
Black Riders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that film, actually. And I like the way
Yeah.
it's all filmed in New Zealand. They're trying to say it's like America somewhere, but if you watch it, you're like, this is clearly New Zealand that they're filming.
Right. That makes sense. All right, Miss Cat, do you have any last minute questions so we can wrap up?
Yeah, I just what can you give us a little bit of what Patriarch is about that's coming up? Is it already filmed?
So no, it's we're that's the weird position we're in. We kind of got two films on the slate, and one as in like upcoming, and Patriarch is one of them. So Patriarch is kind of more of a sci-fi thriller horror, which is basically there's a part of countryside. There was a research center. There was a horrible accident leaving a certain area of the country uninhabitable, should we say. And then 7 years later, after nothing happening and nobody's allowed in and out of this quarantine zone, one of the researchers that worked in that facility 7 years later walks out unharmed. And it's all about who is he? Why is he there? What's happening? And why is he talking about all this weird stuff which is starting to happen in a quarantine zone and how it's going to be the end of everything?
Yeah,
So
that makes
Nice.
that seems so much fun. Maybe we can coordinate with your team to bring you on to talk about that once that releases.
Yeah, we'll
Have
give
a
you a shot.
little launch party.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we can pick your brain some more about your new stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be fun. So
All right.
we'll let you know as soon as it won't be till where are we now? I mean,
We're in
we won't-
October
we won't be-
already.
It's spring before anything happens anyway, so bear with us on that one. That's the decision of the two. Is basically Patriarch's a bigger budget one, which takes longer, and then we've got another idea for a shorter, lower budget one, which is more kind of Older God size that can be done quicker. So now we're trying to decide can you get that short one in before doing the big thing, or do you just put all of your time into boosting the big thing? So watch this space.
Yeah.
We'll let you know.
Decisions.
Yeah, that's it. So many things involved in it. So
That makes a lot of sense. Well, if you guys are interested, you guys can go to wagyufilms.com. If you go to short films, you can check out all their stuff they're doing. You can read all about everybody that is in the team. You can see all the behind the scenes, get involved through the filmmaking podcast. It looks like there's a lot of very good resources in here for everybody to
we
take a
try and
look
make
at.
an effort. We try and make an effort of actually bringing people along for the ride. So if you don't have to be a filmmaker, but there is lots of filmmaking advice. But and if you're not a filmmaker, you just love behind the scenes and how films are actually made, how the sausage is made, so to speak. We there's lots of that on the Wagyu Films YouTube channel, on our Instagram, on so if everybody gives us a follow on there, you'll see plenty of stuff and loads of stuff coming as well.
Yeah, I see that.
You'll actually see a lot of older gods making up, but you will see a few videos of Patriarch as well, because we started ramping it up to produce it, and then once they're swapping to older gods, so you can get a flavor of what Patriarch's going to be as well.
I see you guys are
Watch older
building.
gods. Don't worry about that. Just go and watch older gods.
Yeah, it's free on Tubi, guys. You guys can go watch that. If you want to know some special effects for older gods, which I'm definitely gonna view after this, I'm gonna do that. You guys feel free to give him a follow.
Sorry, Luna. I was just going to say, I don't think the website is caught up with the YouTube. There's loads more stuff on YouTube.
Oh, more stuff on YouTube. Okay.
More. You'll have interviews with Rory, the actor. You'll have more in-depth interviews with me. You've got visual effects breakdowns of befores and afters and things like that. It's all talking to the team. We tried to split them up by stories. The story of working in such a weird location, and so I should make a note to tell everybody to update the website. Actually, but there's loads of stuff on the Wagyu Films YouTube channel, so check it out.
Awesome. You guys check it out. It's free to check it out. Before we go, I'm going to make a quick announcement. Next week, we have a very, very interesting thing happening. We're having two things. On the 9th, we are interviewing Thomas A. Fowler, who has written several books. He has written books like I believe it's like Thales. And then also the very next day, we're doing our fan day. CJ from Virosa's show, who is also in the UK, is joining us. Yeah, we're getting all the UK love. We're here for it. We're discussing his personal favorite. He's the host over at the Virosa's show. So that's going to be awesome, and you don't want to miss it. And for his choice, we're going to do a deep dive and discussion of The Grudge. That's happening. Yeah, that's happening on the 10th. So you guys don't want to miss it. Next week is loaded with a lot of guests from also the UK and obviously also an American writer. So we're definitely going to be very busy the next couple of weeks. All right, David, do you want to let our viewers know anything before we let you go?
Just thank you for listening to me ramble on. But if you check out Wagyu Films, you can find me, but most of the stuff is posted on what's Wagyu? WAGYU Films. But otherwise, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for all our sneaky ninjas that are in the background watching. We love you. I see you guys. I see you. So thank you all for joining, and you can watch this video at any time if you caught the tail end of it, because I see some people straggled at the end. You guys can rewatch this at any time. Go watch Older Gods free on Tubi with ads. And yeah, just
I always do that. It's on Prime and Apple and all that, but it's free on Tubi. Forget Rowan.
with ads.
You can get it on Prime and all that if you like, but it is free.
Yeah, buy it on Prime if you'd like. If you end up watching it free and you end up loving it, purchase it.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
always
that's
the
a-
best
that's
thing.
a fair-
Definitely
that's-
one you'll wanna
That's a fair.
watch
exchange.
again. I definitely want to watch it again.
Yes, me too. Me too. I definitely want to watch it after I watch some of the behind the scenes and see what we get out of it.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
you.
you.